Due to the popularity of so many true crime shows, Fox 11 is digging into our very own archives. We're taking a look at the Grim Sleeper case and the controversial method that police used to solve the case. Gina Silva has a story in tonight's True Crime Files.
On the hunt, looking for the next victim, enticing women to get into his car.
Once he has her in the car, she's dead. She doesn't know it yet, but she's dead.
Deborah Jackson, Henrietta Wright, Barbara Ware, Bernita Sparks, Mary Lowe, Latrika Jefferson, Alicia Alexander, Princess Bartholomew, Valerie McCorvey, and Janisha Peters, all murdered by this man, Lonnie David Franklin Jr., also known as the Grim Sleeper.
He would shoot his victims 1 to 3 times, usually in the chest, left of center.
Retired LAPD detective Cliff Shepard says all the victims were young black women from South Central Los Angeles. They were raped, most were shot, some were strangled, their photographs taken with a Polaroid, and then their bodies tossed like trash.
Nobody had a clue who was doing this.
It was the 1980s, the beginning of the crack epidemic. Crime was at an all-time high. Police didn't know it, but they were dealing with not just one serial killer, but 4. The Grim Sleeper, the Southside Slayer, Michael Hughes and Chester Turner, and there was also the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez.
I mean, we had so many murders, so many women murdered.
The LAPD took a lot of heat because it took so long to solve this case, and you were accused of not caring because they were black women.
Yes, there were a few activists that were there accusing us of doing nothing. That was not true.
Shepard says the LAPD didn't have the manpower nor the technology at the time to solve the multiple murders. Franklin began killing women in 1985 and continued through 1988, then stopped.
Either he became more careful or he stopped his behavior for a number of years.
When the murders picked up again, the killer was dubbed the Grim Sleeper. It would take 25 years for the LAPD to finally identify the suspect as Franklin.
With familial DNA, although his name wasn't in CODIS as a convicted offender, a relative was, a male relative, and that's what we needed.
The familial search turned up Franklin's son. Detectives then discovered Franklin was living in this lime green house on the 1700 block of 81st Street, not far from where the women had been murdered. Now all detectives needed was to obtain Franklin's DNA to make sure he was the right person.
He was watched 24 hours a day until we could get a sample.
When Franklin came to this pizza shop in Buena Park, detectives picked up his half-eaten slice of pizza and immediately took it to a DNA lab.
And then what we found out about 2.5 days later is that DNA from the pizza, the uneaten pizza, was Lonnie's.
This was the first time in California history that familial DNA was successfully used. This is footage from our True Crime Files on July 7th, 2010.
We made an arrest of the suspect that has been known to many as the Grim Sleeper.
A complete shock for this community who knew Franklin as a retired sanitation employee and a man who often fixed cars for his neighbors.
He helped the elderly. He helped everybody in the neighborhood, the community. He would work on cars for dirt cheap to keep your car going.
He's been over to my house 1,000,000 times. One time my car broke down on the 405 and my husband was in Lancaster and he sent Lonnie to pick me up. You know, so I'm riding in the car with the Grim Sleeper.
When he was finally arrested and he was interrogated, what did he say?
Denials. Just, oh, I had sex with a lot of women. He never admitted to murdering anybody or hurting anyone.
When investigators searched Franklin's house, they found 180 photographs of women. Some have been identified, others have not. Detectives have also found identification cards of women who were reported missing.
To this day, we don't know where they are. We're certain they're dead. You know, I'm sorry to say, but we found no evidence of where their bodies could be.
Mr. Franklin, Lonnie Franklin, is that your true name? Yes, it is.
On May 5th, 2016, Franklin was found guilty of 10 murders and 1 attempted murder. 3 months later, he was sentenced.
It is the judgment and sentence of this court that you shall suffer the death penalty.
He showed absolutely no emotion the entire time Franklin was in court. not a surprise to the victims' families.
He doesn't value life. He didn't care.
It's just unbelievable, a human being to be so cold and uncaring.
Decades of terror came to an end on March 28, 2020, when the grim sleeper, Lonnie David Franklin Jr., died at the age of 67 while on death row in San Quentin State Prison.
Now, while Franklin was convicted of 10 murders and 1 attempted murder, detectives believe he killed many more women, but their bodies have never been recovered. I'm Gina Silva, Fox 11 News.